You're listening to Speaking of Faith with Bishop D.D. Duncan Proby of the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York. I'm Rachel Ravelette, or Romcom, and we're glad you're here.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast, Speaking of Faith. My name is D.D. Duncan Proby. I'm the Episcopal Bishop of Central New York. That's Canada to Pennsylvania and Utica to Elmira, Finger Lakes, a little bit of the Adirondacks, lots of the beautiful people and places in between. I'm joined by Rachel Ravelette, our communications director. And today we're going to be talking about how we do build community across difference. What is it to be in relationship with people who don't agree with us or with people who may be challenging for us and how they see the world? We're talking about this as part of our faith because down through history, we know this. Don't talk about religion, politics, or money. We've done that for years, and the upshot is that we can't talk about religion, politics, or money. We lost our ability to have good conversations about what matters most to us. And so in this time with so much division in the world, whether it's partisan or personal or opinions, people seem fraught with wanting to fight or disagree or only be around, really, people in their bubble, people who are like them. And as people of faith, we're not called to isolate ourselves from the world. We know this from the Apostle Paul and down through the ages, that the message as Christians of Jesus, or whatever your faith tradition may be, is that we don't live our faith in sort of isolation totally. We live it in relationship with other people. So speaking of faith, how do we speak of community when there's differences as part of our faith? Now, our passage that we've been using and we're going to continue to delve into is from Romans chapter 12, verses 9 and following. And in this passage, it's, how we know we're living the Christian life. This is a writing from the Apostle Paul that talks about what it is to know that we're living our faith out loud. And it starts off with, let love be genuine, hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection, outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal, be ardent in spirit, serve the Lord, rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints, extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, this passage, there is so much here. It will take us throughout all of these episodes. For today, one of the places I'm sort of drawing closer to is where it's rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. And I'm focusing on that because today we're talking about, do we really want to have community across difference? I mean, often what we kind of seek is a place where we feel comfortable, or we like what is said, or it meets our objectives. I think it's one of the difficulties with trying to talk about building community across difference is to really ask ourselves what our own motivations are. Sometimes what we want is just people who will listen to us and agree with us and make us feel good about our personal preference. But real community across difference has bigger goals than that. Bigger goals than just people who make me feel good about things I think. Real community is being there in times of joy and sorrow, people with whom we have a depth of relationship, where our disagreements are more on the surface, but the love we share and the compassion and the mutuality are deep and personal and binding. So last week we talked about to repent of the need to be right, to talk about how we enter into this space of building community across difference with a curiosity about others' opinions. If someone has a different partisan view, to think about, I wonder what is important to them. What are the shared values we hold in common? And so this week kind of follows right on that. Are we really interested in community across difference, or do we just want to be coercive and be right? Are we only listening to understand or being curious so that we can then formulate an opinion that sort of beats that opinion? Or we're trying to win an argument. It is hard to enter into an argument with an open curiosity and a willingness to learn and to grow and maybe to change our minds in some ways that we can. We certainly are not going to abandon all of our beliefs, but it may be that we have been listening with our own agenda and not understanding the agenda of another. Now, Rachel, I've thrown out a lot of stuff, so I don't know what your thoughts are as I've been talking, but what for you about this conversation about building community across difference is alive for you?
Well, I really appreciated what you said, Bishop, about understanding that our relationships go deeper than our disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me brought to mind this idea of there are some non-negotiables for me. And I think we all have those, and I think it's good to be able to articulate those. But what I hear you also saying is that the depth of our relationship and our goal of relationship means I need to think about how I'm going to deal with those non-negotiables. So like for me, anything that's dehumanizing of another, that's a no-go. That's a no-go for me. But in my response, am I dehumanizing the person who did the dehumanizing? Am I doing the very thing that I said that this is non-negotiable for me? And so this idea of our common interest is having a deeper relationship for the good of all. And so how do I navigate my boundaries? How do I navigate those non-negotiables? Because we will have disagreements, but I want to keep those disagreements on the surface and remember the humanity of the other.
Absolutely. That's so important. I'm glad you brought in the dehumanization and especially becoming what we are opposing. Often we are faced with an aggressor or someone who's saying something, and our response at times can be the same thing in reverse. We become part of the problem. Instead of creating a new way to relate, we're just doubling down, as it were. And if we feel bullied, then we bully back. Oh, well, you're not listening to me. Well, I won't even hear you. Instead of stopping and saying, dehumanizing means that I'm treating another person as if they are less value than myself, or that their opinion doesn't matter because mine is superior, and I've already won the argument, so I don't need to listen. And we know we're doing this, I think, when we're listening to someone talk about what they feel, and in our heads we're just creating our answers. We're already like postulating, okay, so you think this, well, I can say this to that, or I can beat that tune in one note. We're already preparing our response to push them back and to say,
we're
you're
playing
not right.
chess instead of trying to build community.
Exactly. And as people of faith, when we look in the Christian faith, we of course look to Jesus. When Jesus is dealing with Pontius Pilate or with any of the people who stand in opposition to him, there is always a piece in the gospel where Jesus is talking to them with respect, with dignity, with an honoring of them, and with saying, well, you say so, but not with, calling names, well, except for maybe the brood of vipers, but where Jesus is talking with people and honoring that we're all searching for truth. And I think of Jesus on the cross with the thief saying, today you will be with me in paradise. The forgiveness is for all. And so when our anxiety and our emotions start to elevate in a conversation, when we find ourselves wanting to be right, when we find ourselves wanting to win an argument, then our desire has shifted from actually building community or seeking to understand or developing a relationship to winning. And one of the fallacies in human life is this idea that some win and some lose. Because in a relationship, when one person wins and the other person loses, everybody loses. Because the only way in a relationship for people to truly win is for both people to be honored and respected, even if the difference isn't able to be addressed. And so, for instance, someone who puts someone down and the other person just gets silent, it may feel like the person who did the putting down has won, but what they've broken is the absolute ability to be in a deeper relationship. And so, as we talk about building community across difference, and last time we talked about curiosity, this time is more about mutuality. When the person who we have differences with or the person we see as our enemy is weeping, to weep with them and to show our compassion by recognizing that they're suffering. And so we don't want them to suffer, to build up our ability to be compassionate. Or when the person who's opposing us is joyous, to have that generosity of spirit to recognize the joy rather than to be lost schadenfreude or resentment. It is complex and hard to have community across difference. It is complex and hard to have relationships with people who fundamentally disagree with us. And so it takes an extra amount of our willingness to say, what's important to me here is to recognize that I may be wrong about some things that I cannot see, and I may be absolutely right about some others. But we are humans trying to all live our lives. And the respect that I give is the respect that I receive in many ways. And if someone isn't respectful of me, then to set a boundary and say no. Because if I'm not respectful of someone else, I would actually want them to set a boundary and say, when you said that, you didn't realize that what you said harmed me. All of us as followers of Jesus, seeking that compassionate way of God, to love one another, to be compassionate to one another, is intrinsically part of our faith. And so it may be that those times when we really don't care about that person's opinion, we really don't care about them, to instead see that as our own sinfulness, not as a difference of opinion, not as a proof that we're right, but as an exemplar of those moments when we have lost our way, when we have forgotten that we need forgiveness, that there are places where we are wrong, and the forgiveness that we offer is the forgiveness we've received, and that it's a reciprocity of healing within us. We cannot find our own healing if we're isolating another person, because we have cut ourselves off from a person God loves. Well, this is a tough topic, and this is going to be a short podcast because we all need to sit with this for a minute, I think, and think about, do we want community across difference, or are we just wanting to be right? And if we're just wanting to be right, I wonder if that isn't a fear of loss. That'll be something for an upcoming podcast to talk about being right and a fear of being left out. Now, I also want to let you know that I am going to be taking a break from doing podcasts for a while. I've talked a lot about it's important to take rest, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to take some time to rest. I will be back in September with a couple of podcasts. In the Diocese of Central New York, we have our convention at the first or the second week of October. And so there'll be more wonderful things coming in September and October. But I'm going to take a bit of a break. And so in this time, as we are all hopefully resting and spending some time doing things that are rejuvenating, let us consider seriously how we speak of our faith. And may we all continue to build community across difference, to seek healing and love and restoration in our lives, that we may indeed be part of a world that's healed by love. May you know that you are loved, and may you be blessed to be a blessing. And I'll see you and speak with you in September. Take good care.
Thanks for joining us. Speaking of Faith with Bishop Dee is a production of the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York. Our theme music is by Fleece Mob, and it's called A Bird in Hand. We use it with permission. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast through your favorite podcasting app so that you can be the first to know when new episodes are available. If you like what you've heard here, please leave us a rating and review. If you don't like what you've heard here, we're sure you're still a wonderful person, but maybe don't leave us a review? Just kidding. We love honest feedback and questions. You can connect with us online between episodes at cnyepiscopal.org/podcast and on social media at CNY Episcopal. Blessings to you, friends.